Hi, this is Mike Maloney, and about a month and a half ago I did a video called Revolution, the Risk-Reward Ratio. And it was mostly about Venezuela, whose society is starting to come apart at the seams. And this was brought on, the hyperinflation that they're going into now can eventually cause a revolution. The hyperinflation is basically brought on by a government that says it's going to take care of everybody and solve everybody's problems and run the economy, and it tries to do that through deficit spending funded by currency creation. Now, I've been following this story for a long time. Here's Venezuela, the chaos to come, and this is December of 2013. And this is actually an excerpt from an even earlier video. And in this, I made a bunch of predictions. Well, just last week, I watched Life on the Line Inside Venezuela's Crisis, and a lot of my predictions are coming true. One of the things that I was talking about in my video from 2013 was that Maduro had just passed a law. He thought that electronics and appliances had gotten too expensive, so he passed a law saying that all retailers of electronics and appliances had to cut their prices by 50%. Well, you know, if you're running a business selling electronics, you're probably making about 30%. So if you have to cut your prices by 50%, you're losing money on everything that you sell. So that was a law that basically said that all inventory of electronics and appliances must be sold off and not replaced, and those businesses must close because that's their only option. They're selling them at a loss. They can't make enough to make a living and replace the merchandise. And so what I said in that video is that the very last cell phones and computers and washing machines and refrigerators and stoves, the very last of those are now being sold off in this country, and all of the rest of them from now on that are sold are going to be through the black market. All of those stores basically have to close because it's government mandated that they have to close because the government had just mandated that they could not make a profit. And it's all the government's fault through inflation. But some of the crazy ways that the government deals with this is an article from just last week that Venezuela's latest response to food shortages is to ban the lines that develop outside of bakeries and such. And so this says that President Maduro has stopped trying to fix problems like devastating scarcity of food, which has led to things like malnutrition, riots, food truck hijackings, vigilante lynchings of petty thieves, and the starvation of zoo animals, which I will come back to in a minute. He's not admitting that it's a failure of the socialism imposed on this oil-rich country by Hugo Chavez. Instead, he's launching a war on anxiety. He actually believes that this is a result of a greater conspiracy, that the scarcity that is happening is retailers and such getting together and trying to scare the people with these shortages. He believes that a U.S.-backed agitators engaging in economic warfare by keeping things like toilet paper off of supermarket shelves. And so what his answer is to find bakeries that allow lines to stretch out their front doors. So you always point the finger somewhere else. And so this is so similar to things that have happened in the past under very similar situations. But I want to get back to those zoo animals. You know, I'm a real animal lover. My favorite film of all time is The Black Stallion. I watched it just last weekend with a couple of friends. When it first came out back in 1979 or 1980, I went to the theater many times to see it. I was so impressed with such an incredibly beautiful Francis Ford Coppola masterpiece. But what is happening here is people are slaughtering and eating the zoo animals. They come into the zoo at night. Here, a group of intruders broke into the zoo, pulled a black stallion from its cage, and then slaughtered it for the meat. You know, stuff like this makes me very, very sad. But at the same time, they can't afford to feed these animals, so the animals are going to starve to death anyway. But this is the result of government limiting economic freedom. It says dozens of zoo animals are slowly starving to death. And it also says that a few weeks ago it was pigs and sheep that were the targets of being slaughtered. People are so hungry that they are actually hunting cats, dogs, and pigeons. I would imagine that rats go along with that, because in these types of situations that becomes a favorite food also. This is the type of thing that a government can cause when they don't allow the free market to work. Now, economists know what a market is. The free market is just people dealing with people. Yet a lot of economists think that they can pull levers and push buttons on this thing and force some people to deal with other people and then keep some people from dealing with other people and sort of guide that economy, and they're wrong. This is a chart of Venezuela's net oil exports, and it's measured in thousands of barrels per day. So this is 3,000 barrels of oil, or in other words, 3 million barrels of oil. And this would be 1997, 1998, 1999 when Hugo Chavez took office, 2000, and then somewhere in here he nationalized the oil companies, somewhere around this peak. What I find interesting here, oil was $10 a barrel back then. Then it started rising as their production started falling. Now, with so much more cash, oil going from $10 to $140 a barrel down here, that means that oil went up 14 times, and this has not even dropped by half. So that means that they're having 7 times more income from the oil that they're pumping, even though this is going downhill. Now, if their oil industry is that profitable, because, and I'm sure that Hugo Chavez thought that this was all of his work, all this extra income from oil, because he nationalized the oil companies, but look at what happened to their production. It was just falling off a cliff because government doesn't do anything well. So their ability to produce oil was falling, and this only goes out to 2013. I would bet that right now their oil production is just falling off a cliff, and this is an enormous portion of the national income for Venezuela. Now, in this video that I did back in 2013, I talked about how Venezuela was a naturally rich country, and how the limitation of economic freedom, whenever they limit freedom, it destroys prosperity. And I had written an article in 2014 on the topic, and in the article I said, the mission of my book and my video series, The Hidden Secrets of Money, is to enlighten the world that maximum prosperity can only be achieved through individual freedom, free markets, and sound money. And I went on to say that this is not theory or speculation, it is documented fact. People in the most economically free countries are richer, happier, have cleaner environments, and live 20 years longer than the least economically free. Venezuela is a prime example. Being one of the world's largest oil exporters, Venezuela is a naturally rich country. In 1980, Venezuela was ranked the 14th most economically free country in the world, but when oil prices fell dramatically in the late 80s, the economy turned down. When the extreme socialist Hugo Chavez took office in 1999, it was decided the government would fix everything by running the economy and began nationalizing many of the country's industries. Now the nation has fallen from the 14th most economically free to number 152 out of 152 countries measured. Food is scarce, inflation is soaring, corruption is rampant, healthcare is overburdened and crumbling, property rights are almost non-existent, and the middle class is gone. I imagine the next steps will be complete collapse and revolution. Well, with this hyperinflation, those usually will end in a collapse and revolution. And this is what you get when you ask the country to take care of you instead of you taking care of yourself. Thank you very much for listening. If you got anything from this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.